Happy Monday morning, guys. As you can tell, I still don't have my computer back. Boo. I got most of the grading done. There's still a few things left. Some stuff with people who submitted via email and some late submissions. So I'll be catching up on that this week. So obviously, if you have any questions about the grades so far, feel free to email all that good stuff. Doing my best to keep up with the appointments. I've got a lot of people who are having trouble with Teams, including myself a little bit. So I've been taking a lot of these kind of off appointments. If you need them, just let me know. We'll figure it out. Today I am sporting The Mandalorian. I don't know if I've ever worn this before. If I have, shut up. We got Mando here. There's Baby Yoda, the child, Grogu, whatever you want to call him. My kids just call him Baby Yoda. A little part of me dies. I'm like, it's Grogu. In any case, you guys can definitely see why my wife was so enamored of me when we first met. So I got a lot catching up to do with the discussion posts. I haven't gone into the discussion posts in a long time. I got a lot of credit to disperse through there. So I definitely want to get up and shore that up, look at some of these drafts. I really want to ask for a draft of the how-to. And I'm thinking for this week, by Thursday, if we could get like a page of the how-to. That's a little ambitious because I haven't asked you to write anything yet. Honestly, for today, it might actually be best to actually just ask you guys to kind of maybe just sort of write a bit in a kind of free write style about what you plan to write your how-to guides on. So the big thing I wanted to talk about today, and I got it right here on my notes, I gave you guys the assignment with 3 how-to videos last week, and I want to kind of sort of dissect those a little bit because there's a lot of different ways to tackle this problem in the 21st century as we, try to go and do our how-tos. And I think there's one that might be a little bit easier and very appropriate for this particular level, and some kind of pitfalls you can fall into. So when I was teaching you guys about exposition, and I was talking about all the different ways that you can format this type of writing, doing the info mapping stuff, images, diagrams, yada, yada, yada. All that's to space out the writing, right? There's 3 kind of main approaches, and I'm sure there's more. If we stopped and really talked about all the different ways we could do a how-to, there's more options here. And I'm very willing to entertain ways that students can kind of take this assignment and make it their own. You guys have done that a lot with the other assignments, and whenever you guys take it in a bit of a different direction, it has a tendency to work out in a very positive way for you. So obviously, if you guys have like a strange kind of very different idea in your head about what you could do with this assignment, don't think that is something that you can't experiment with. One of the things my students in the face-to-face class the other day asked about is, could they make their own video? And my response to that actually was yes. The problem with making a video is it has to be pretty high quality, right? A how-to video needs to be quite meticulous and needs to have, lots of visuals and needs to be patterned out in a way that's very, very, very methodical. What I do with these YouTube lectures might not necessarily be the best way to go about this because my lectures are very organic. I don't really do a lot of the PowerPoint stuff. That's just not how I roll. I've been told I should. I cannot stand PowerPoint. I don't like to use it in my classes. I don't like to use it in much of anything because PowerPoint is something that when it's used incorrectly, it's an absolute nightmare. That being said, I've had students in the class in the past do this assignment using a PowerPoint presentation to kind of format it a little bit, to kind of sort of organize it. That can work too. The problem with PowerPoint is you're going to have to put a lot of content into the PowerPoint. It's going to have to be a lot of slides. It's going to have to go for quite some time. So you're going to have to put a lot of work into that. So these are all methods that you could use. The main thing I wanted really to get out there today was there are 3 main ways that I think you can approach this assignment from kind of like a philosophical standpoint. The first is a very meticulous and serious and detailed approach to the problem. I recently, this weekend, hung up blinds, and I'm looking at how to replace the screen on a screen door. Those are all very complicated things to do. I ended up hanging the blinds. I'm actually pretty proud of that. I'm not the handiest guy in the world, but if you back me into a corner, I can do some work in the house. I'm not going to like it, and I'm going to cuss, and I'm going to rage, but I can do it, right? I turn into an absolute diva when I have to do handy stuff. Now, in any case, that type of task really needs a lot of hand holding. You have to really guide the reader through every step, because your main thing is you're trying to guide them through a task. In the essence, you're trying to get them to approximate some level of correctness or functionality. So if you really want to just cover a whole bunch of meticulous process, you could do that. And that's going to be the most thoroughly infomap thing that you're going to try to write, right? Now, a lot of my students who aren't as creative, and it's funny because I get a little hung up on this. You hear me say a lot, especially my face-to-face classes. I don't want people to think I'm making fun of them. There's a lot of people out there who don't have the thrill of that kind of being creative, right? There's a lot of people who just don't have that drive to creativity. People who don't have that creative drive often want something that's very meticulous and planned out for them. They operate better under that kind of environment rather than, like trying to put together a bunch of writing with a lot of personality and stuff. I've had a lot of students who would prefer to just, flat out put instructions on a page. The problem with that approach is that you are going to run into the potential plagiarism issue. Simply because if you're dealing with a lot of rote information, it's very easy to kind of sort of just find a guide online and find information and just sort of regurgitate it onto the page. I'm not going to say that that is 100% a terrible idea, but I want you to be mindful of that. Don't just take from other websites and assemble it. I want you to attempt to explain these steps, and I want you to find your own way of organizing them into a system that makes sense. Now, that's hard, but for a lot of students, that actually kind of turns out to be a more intuitive way of doing this assignment. The second is kind of a tips and tricks format. That format is going to give you a lot more leeway in the way that you approach it. I'm just realizing I want my computer back. This webcam makes me look like I'm sitting in the dark, and it drives me absolutely nuts. My connection also has a tendency to drop. I'm sure you guys have noticed, but in any case, that's me getting way off track. So the tips and tricks format, that's when you take a less what's the word I'm looking for here? A less strenuous task. And instead of focusing on the absolute how-to, you're giving a guide to better ways of performing the task or important things to know, right? That one really, so the first one was the repairing holes in your drywall. That's what that's what we were looking at there. He was giving very specific types of holes, giving specific strategies for each type, depending on what's wrong with your wall. The tips and the trick strategy would be like painting the miniatures. There are different techniques to try. There are mixing of colors, which I'm still trying to, this is sad. I love painting miniatures, but I'm terrible at it. Like, I really should have brought my miniatures in to show. I do my own little Warhammer miniatures. I've got some in here. This is a Poxwalker from 40K, and I haven't even painted these dudes yet, so I got a lot of work to do on this note, but I don't have any of my painted ones, and they all look like a flipping kindergartner got a hold of them, right? The idea of having a wet palette and mixing colors, I have no concept of how to mix colors to create new colors. You might as well just be doing a magic spell at that point, right? So I've been like thinking and pondering in my noodle, like, am I really going to try that? Is that, I'm getting way off base here. But the point is, if you're doing something like painting and doing something that's a little bit less absolutely married to the steps of the task, you can kind of focus on it in a way that, these are some things to consider, some strategies you could take hold of. That removes a lot of the onus of having an absolutely detailed instruction guide where every single step along the way is described. I don't know if I told you guys this or not. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I used to have this thing where you would get the class to describe in words how to put together a Lego model. No, I got to show this off. This is one of my favorite Lego models. That one is actually kind of an interesting sort of exception to it. It's a building of a model, but this had to be done by strenuous, absolutely perfect steps, because if you don't build something like this absolutely according to the instructions, it's not going to look like what it looks like on the box, which whole other debate there. So in any case, it's kind of hard to talk about tips and tricks with Lego model building, but when you're actually doing painting and stuff like that, you've got that kind of open sort of discussion where we can talk about these different strategies that you might use, what works, what doesn't, right? And that point, it really is kind of more like I can't believe I'm going to use this word, a listicle. Listicles, Jesus, I feel so flipping lame for pointing this out. You guys have probably seen listicles before, but you are way too cool to know that they're listicles. A listicle is an article that has its main organizational focus as to it is simply a list. And sometimes it's like a top 10 list. Sometimes it's just an arbitrary list of things we didn't know. But so listicles really just kind of have their organization organized around this kind of just an arbitrary list of things. And you describe that list of things step by step as you go through. It's not nearly as strenuous as that first one. And it could allow for a little bit more creative, free kind of, exploration of a topic, as opposed to, being so married to a single structure. Now, the third one is a lot like that Yogscast video where they were playing Minecraft. And there is definitely space to go into a kind of how-to writing and not take it seriously at all and just have fun with it. I've had some really good writing play around with this idea. I'm noticing there's a piece on my little Lego Star Wars walker that's a little out of place. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to stop the video and I want to go back and fix it, because no, I can't have this thing like not perfect. Fight the urge, Dave. In any case, that video is really interesting from a lot of perspectives. The Yogscast is a British gaming channel, and they were one of the first really, really big gaming channels out there. And they were part of kind of like the groups that launched Minecraft into its weird superstardom status. They were incredibly popular, and it kind of all started with that how to survive the first night. But if you watch that video, you'll notice that they didn't actually put together a good guide at all. It's terrible. They don't succeed very well. They spend most of their time just goofing off and joking about just inane stuff. At one point, Simon says to Lewis, "You're getting distracted really easily." We think of how-to guides as being very stringent, right? It being very on task. They weren't. They got distracted. They went off on tangents, and it ended up just completely, it was a pretty terrible how-to with them crouching in the dark, hiding all night, right? So the point with this video is a how-to, even though it's very, very strict in its philosophy, there's lots of space to play around and do some really silly, unexpected stuff. I've had students write stuff like how to road rage. that was a funny one. I enjoyed that one. How to ruin a wedding was a really, really good one. That one definitely went above the PG-13 rating. I've had some students do this one kind of skirts the line a little bit, but one of my favorite examples, and this was actually in a technical writing class, I had students design a wrestling. I may have told you guys all this already too. My brain is not working very well this morning. I had students design a wrestling league. To design a wrestling league, one of the things that they ended up doing, and this was, again, this is the technical writing class, so this was a little higher level than the 1101, so they had a lot more requirements on top of them. They basically wrote out descriptions of the types of wrestling matches they would have. They put together profiles for different wrestlers that they would have, the different moves that they would perform, band moves, and all sorts of interesting stuff they were able to kind of put together. And they created this whole roster of wrestlers, who their champ was going to be. They actually ended up having a lot of fun with it. They created their own games at one point. So, like, again, there is a great deal of creativity that you could inject into this assignment. Now, one of the things I advise students to do, the sillier you are with this and the more creativity you inject into it, the less likely you are to plagiarize anything, because you are literally, in order to be silly and play with the concept, you have to inject a lot of your personal voice into it. And when students inject their personal voice into stuff, it's a pretty clear marker that they're not just ripping it off from somewhere else. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. So I'm going to leave this off today just with a very quick discussion thing. And I promise those participation grades are about to go up once I go in and, grade those. But what do you want to write your how-to paper on? What strategies might you use? Who might you emulate? What kind of images, what kind of tricks might you use to blow this up into the required 5 pages, right? So take that for about a paragraph. See if you can milk about 5 to 8 sentences from it. Let's see if we can kind of get our thoughts and ideas organized. And at least I know the Teams works on this laptop. So if I don't get my computer back for another 16 years or so, at least I know I can basically kind of sort of a little bit function in an official capacity as your instructor. I really want my computer back. I really miss my computer. If I let this video go on any longer, I'm just going to start complaining and I might start crying, and that's going to get, that's going to get awkward for everybody. So that's enough for today. Start thinking about all that stuff. Why am I doing the crazy motion? And have a very blessed, wonderful, happy day.